They are so cool, nice, fun, interesting people. And the first one tonight is my good buddy, John Killacky. John, come on in.
Hello,
John,
my
John,
love.
John. Hello, hello, hello. All right.
Listen, Russell is serious about support because I tried to get a free T-shirt out of him before we went live, and he said I send money and I get a T-shirt. So he is very clear about support. So
Well,
God love him for that.
you know, we're artists. You know how we artists are.
And you tell your cousin Crystal LeMay that I'm not going to be running again, so I won't be in the Vermont House, but I will be her campaign manager to run for mayor.
Oh, that will be fascinating. So, John, tell our viewers, give me the elevator speech from floor 1 to floor 2 of your past work experience and where you are now.
Well, I moved to Vermont in 2010 to run the Flynn Center. Did that for 8 years, and I had you jump off a building with logos on all over and raise money, $150,000. Not just you, but which was great fun. You've always been such a supporter of the arts and for everything in Burlington. You're amazing, Amber. And then in 2018, I stepped down from the Flynn. I retired, and I thought, what's the next part of my service? And so I've spent the last 4 years in the Vermont House of Representatives, representing South Burlington, where I live, and it's been an incredible honor.
What would you say was your major accomplishment? When looking back on those 4 years, would you say that's what I'm most proud of?
Well, first, I'm grateful. I've learned so much. The committee I sit on is the General Housing and Military Affairs. So we did a lot about investigating sexual harassment and assault in the Guard. We also did a lot with housing. And so I think the thing that I did my most work on is during the pandemic, making sure those without homes were safe, because we had to close the shelters. So making sure motels were provided and services were provided. And that has been an extraordinary learning process for me to be deeply involved in that community. I also worked on recovery issues and recovery homes across the state because, the opiate issues in our state are just so complicated. And so I was grateful to work there too.
What was your biggest challenge?
I had been used to being a CEO, head of the Flynn, and the legislature is a very hierarchical organization with committee chairs and then tenured people. And I've come away really believing that there should be term limits in the Vermont House, that people, it's a part-time citizen legislature, and which is really fantastic. But I think people should not necessarily spend decades of their lives in these part-time positions.
That's an interesting conversation and a debate to have, because I'm not in favor of term limits. I think the term limits happen at the ballot box. That's what I think, but I also know where you're coming from as
Yes.
well. So,
but, Amber, as you started with your wonderful parodies, I was thinking about you're so great taking on Trump, and I thank you for that. But look at some of the people running on the Republican ticket in Vermont. Okay, I'm not running anymore, so I can be a little more honest here. But we got someone in Essex saying that the ballots can be hacked, and we got a person in Brattleboro and one in Bennington who were in January 6th. We have another person. These are all people running the House, Republicans. Another Republican woman in Essex has pictures of Donald Trump being surrounded by God signing forms. These are the Republicans who are running in our state. And, the Republican Party is a joke at this point.
So what do you think the chances are of those people getting elected?
Well, I think next to zero. Some of them aren't even showing up for debates, but this is what's being put forward. And with our media trying to be fair to people, trying to even give them credibility, is like, oh my God, this is, even the man running against Peter Wells for Senate, he's only lived in the state for 2 years.
Yeah,
he has another home out of state, and he has a business out of state. And it's like, really? Okay, so you can just move here and decide you're going to run for Senate? deploy Malloy. I mean, it's frightening, but that.
However, don't you think that, aren't you relieved that we do live here in Vermont and we don't have the close races that are happening elsewhere that could go either way?
Well, yes. And what I see, though, is that the wars happen in our school boards across the state. And also, there are a number of town clerks all across the state have gotten these requests for information around the ballots of 2020. And it's almost literally the same. It's like a pro forma thing just to try to screw everything up. So I think we have a real issue about credibility and what is truth and how anyone can be an election denier. So they are fringe candidates, but we also have to remember that a third of Vermont voted for Donald Trump.
Yeah.
In the last election.
All right, John. So you're finished with your term, your 2 terms as state representative. So you're just going to sit at home and have Lawrence feed you bonbons on the couch. Is that it?
Well, I would hope he will. And my husband, Larry, I hope he will give me some bonbons. That would be lovely. I've been busy. I've been writing some pieces. I have a piece about a UVM trans filmmaker named Angelo Madsen Minix, who's going to be shown this Friday at the Vermont International Film Festival. And he's just won a Guggenheim, and he's an amazing artist. And I have a piece in Digger about him. And then I wrote a piece about Julius Eastman, who was a Black gay composer I knew in the 70s. There he is, God love him. And he had a lot of issues. He was a minimalist, but he had a lot of substance issues. In the mid 80s, he was evicted from his apartment for non-payment of rent, and he was homeless. He was living in Thompson Square Park. And I would see him there, and some days he'd be coherent, some days he wouldn't. But what happened is when he was evicted, all of his scores were thrown out. And Julie said, I don't need them anymore. But what's happened is there's been this resurgence of interest in his work, and there had been some tapes and things. So I wrote a piece in Art Fuse, an online piece, and Vermont Public Radio picked it up, and now there's a whole timeline series about Julius. James Stewart is running on Vermont Public Radio. So it's just been thrilling to me to be able now to advocate for some queer artists who are in the margins, like the filmmaker and the composer. So I'm having a great time. And then next week, I make my 17th film. I've been working on this film about the Fluxus movement of the 60s, like Yoko Ono before John Lennon. She was a Fluxus artist. And
describe that term. Or
sure, it was a group of artists who decided that the object wasn't as important as the idea. So like Lamont Young would say, his score would be draw a line and follow it. And then anybody could do whatever they wanted with it. The idea was his, but so like a Namjoon Pike stuck his head in ink and rolled on the floor and made a painting following Lamont's scores. So and Yoko did some about lighting a match, and that was her gesture, and people could do it how they wanted. Hey, I'm 70 now. I can do what I want. And so I'm making a piece using about 15 of these performance scores that I'll be seated at a desk doing.
So what do you hope to do with that film?
Well, I've been blessed. My films have been shown around the world. They're in museums. 4 of them have been on Vermont PBS. So depending on what happens, I think it'll be more of a gallery piece because I'm making a sculpture at the same time. So, we'll see.
Well, good for you, John.
Why not, Amber? Why not?
Oh, why? If not now, when?
Exactly.
That's what I'm saying. All right, John. Well, stick around. I want to have you back later because I want to hear you talk to Taylor and Brian because I
about
think
those conservative scores. I'm staying them around.
Oh
okay?
yeah. Oh yeah. We're going to get on Brian about that.
All
Thank
right.
you, John. We'll be back with you. Oh my gosh.